he made the sacrifice to put his son on a mission. And so literally, like, this is like what happens in Mormonism. It's like, okay, the spiritual blessings of my son going on a mission versus the financial responsibility to provide for my household. I'm going to forget my household. He let the house go to foreclosure. My parents lost their home, the house that they had sacrificed and dreamt of and built. And it was so they were first-time home buyers. They built this house and they lived there we bought it in 1990. I left on 1999, and that's when they lost their house. So 9 years they had just poured into this house, and they lost it. They lost this home. It was like, it's gone. It just vanished. And that was the sacrifice that my dad, in his mind, had to do. Talking about oppression here, like, the rigid confines of like, I need to be right by my son, and I need to do right by God, and God is going to bless me if I lose my house for my son to go on a mission. And frankly, he was blessed. Okay, so as promised, here's the first episode. This is the Liberator Podcast. This is Ryan Nickel, and I'm actually going to go through my excommunication, or me getting the boot from the Mormon Church. And so what we're going to do is we're going to listen to basically the proceedings. So what happened? So in Mormonism, you have these. Let me give you some background here, and then we'll listen to it, and then I'll pause and give some explanation. This is going to be the first time I've listened to this. So we're going to listen to it raw. I haven't listened to this since, I can't remember when this happened. It happened, I think, in May of last year, of 2022. And I recorded it, and I listened to it, I think, 2 or 3 times within a week of that happening, just to help process what had happened. And I haven't listened to it since. So this is going to be a fresh take. So a little bit of background. So Mormonism believes that they are the Holy Grail, that they have the most truth out of all the truth that's available when it comes to Jesus Christ and his life and his gospel. That's what Mormonism believes. And so with Mormonism, they also have this hierarchy of authority where they call it priesthood. So there's this priesthood power that's given to these men on earth to do, God's bidding. And so there are these leaders that, quote unquote, speak to God, and they have God's will like written on their hearts, and they can commune with him, and they know exactly what God would do if he were sitting down in front of you in that setting. If God were a man, mind you. Like, there's a lot of presuppositions as far as like how religion goes. So anyway, Mormonism believes that there is a God, and he is in heaven, and he is a father, and he is a man, and he has a son, and his son is Jesus, and we're all children as well, and Jesus is our brother. And because we are also fallen, Mormonism believes that except for Jesus, everyone else are sinners, but Jesus is his holy son. And therefore, Jesus had to come to earth to die because we are all sinners. But God loved us so much that he gave his son. So anyway, that is Mormonism's belief. And Mormonism believes that only one man, the prophet, has all power to commune to God, to have all these gifts and powers of like translation and prophecy, and they can see the future, and they can heal, and they can do all these things. But yet, people in Mormonism are dying all the time, and no one's healing them. Anyway, I digress. So there is a local leader. He is called a stake president. So there's, if you think of like a tent where you put a stake down, Mormonism is constantly trying to expand itself, and so they're expanding the stakes. They'll pick up a stake and they'll hammer another one down as it grows, and another one. So they're making this tent bigger and bigger and bigger. This all-encompassing tent of Mormonism, which is why you have missionaries are out there knocking on doors. These young men with these white T-shirts and their ties, they're hello. Can we talk to you about Jesus Christ and his gospel? And so, this is what they're doing. And there's women that do it as well. And so, as Mormonism expanding, these stakes are growing and they're expanding as well. And so every stake has all these different wards. If you think of like a ward of like a hospital ward, like they're different sectors. So you can't pick and choose which church you want to go to. So let's say like my friend lives across town and he's Mormon as well, and I want to go to his church or his congregation. I can't. I am confined to the geographical location of where my house is. It's like a school zone. Like, it's like, I can only attend this school because it's next to my house in proximity. I can't go to another school across the area, without like an inter-district transfer or something like that. So that's how Mormonism is. It's very rigid. It's very restrictive. And they have a bishop that oversees all of this. And so anyway, you're going to hear me talk to the stake president, and he has these 2 counselors that he confides in, and they kind of confer and things like that. So you're going to hear me talk to a stake president who's over the entire region of where I live. in Northern California. And you're going to hear, and he also used to be my bishop, so he's someone that I personally know. So you're going to hear our exchange, but I wanted to give you a little bit of oversight here. So let's go ahead without any further ado, let you listen to this beautiful experience that I went through. I'm in my car recording this, by the way. So, I wasn't supposed to record it, but fuck if I cared. They're going to kick me out anyway. Actually, I didn't know they were going to kick me out, which is, and you'll see here, like, how they disguise the kicking me out. So I'm glad I recorded it. So you got me walking up to the door here. My keys rattling. I'm nervous as hell, too. I'm nervous as fuck walking into this, because I know that it's not going to be an easy experience.
Hey, hi. Welcome to our temp offices. When did you get braces? 2.5 months ago. Oh my gosh, how fun.
So I haven't seen this guy. I haven't seen this guy in like, I don't know, a couple of months. He's a grown-ass man and he has braces. And I'm just like, oh my God, like my former spouse, she had braces. And I just remember, I was like, what the hell? Like, adults with braces have just always been funny to me. But anyway, you know, I guess COVID was a great time because you had masks and shit like that. But COVID was over. So anyway, I forgot about that.
Well, come on in. Thank you. Do you have any questions of me right now? I don't. Okay. Now are you? All right. Yeah. Well, go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. All right. How you doing? Fantastic. Great. Good to see you. You too, Liberator. Do you know everybody? I do. Okay. Yeah. I forget when I say you know Liberated that we were joined at the hip in the awards. Well, we're also, you know, Dodger fans too. So, yeah.
All right, so here we are. I'm just trying to be polite here. I'm just trying to be, you know, nice and you know, just friendly here. So there's another guy there. So there's a Spanish branch. A branch is smaller than a ward, basically. It's like a little branch offshoot. And so I knew the guy. He and I are both Dodger fans. The stake president is a Giants fan. So I'm just trying to make fun. Like, you know, it's like, he's like, hey, you know him? I'm like, of course, we're both Dodger fans. And so that's that little, like, you know, conversation there. Maybe it's like a little dig.
All right. We have a little bit of a time constraint, not a big one, but we want to know about your time. So I have Benson at home, and he has a phone. So if he, you know, needs me or feels uncomfortable, okay, he has permission to call me. The missionaries come like at 8:15 or something to do their own job. Oh, that's an hour. That's what, 90 minutes. I think that's more than that time, right? I just want to make you aware of that. In terms of our time together, we hope it's time well spent. Yeah, for sure. And we will not, nor do we record anything. Just want you comfortable with that, okay? For sure. But before we
They don't record.
President Keith, would you open?
I did. Now they're going to offer a prayer.
Our dearest Heavenly Father, we humbly gather this evening as brethren in the gospel. We're grateful to meet with Brother Nickel, and
I'm still a brother.
we invite Thy Spirit to guide our conversation. We're grateful for him and the service that he's rendered in our stake over many years. We're grateful for his service throughout the world as a missionary and in other places that he's lived.
I was a missionary.
For the service that he's given.
Served in Guatemala.
Thy children.
At this time, I was a seminary teacher too, or just had been pulled from that.
The spirit of love will be here as we.
So seminary basically is I teach early morning Bible study to kids that before they go to high school, to prepare them spiritually to be protected from the evils of the world before they go into the secular worldly aspect of schooling. And so that's something that I actually enjoyed doing. Like, I really did enjoy teaching. That's something that I feel like is a gift of mine is to teach. And so that was fun. Listening to this again, I think that they tell me, you're going to hear later on, that they're like, oh, we have we have no preconceived notions of what's going to happen tonight. This is all just, spur of the moment, God's will kind of thing. So I think they already had something planned, but you'll see how this goes.
Counsel together and as we're bound in the priesthood.
There's that word priesthood again.
We humbly ask for these favors and blessings in the sacred name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. So, in your letter, if you go and you read in the handbook, it talks about what a council is. Much different than...
So, I was supposed to be given a letter. I didn't get one. It just basically was, hey, we're inviting you to this council. It's supposed to be a council of love, and we're going to counsel with you because we believe what you're doing is immoral or inappropriate or violates church covenants or standards or doctrine or any of those, all and above. Never received the letter. He opted. He's like, well, we have an opening this Thursday. Can we meet then? Or do you want to wait to get your letter? I'm like, I don't need a letter. Let's just go for this. Okay. Let's just have it out. And that's why I was there. And so he's trying to explain like what this letter is. And she's just trying to, cover its bases. It's really corporate, very sterile, very formal. Like, well, according to the handbook, this is how we have to conduct these particular operations here. And so you'll see how rigid it becomes.
When you had served in South Carolina, and I don't know if you've been...
I've been in a few of these, yes.
Okay. This is...
So I was in a bishopric. I was not the bishop, but I was a counselor. And so I have done these types of interventions, if you will, in the past. So I'm very familiar with how this flows.
I don't know if this is what you expected or not, but at a stake level, they've gone from years ago, with the heinous name of a court, which was
so heinous. So heinous. Don't ever call it a court.
To this disciplinary council.
The council is so much better than a court.
Council. This council tonight, it truly is a council in every sense of the word council. That we want you to feel like, I think in the prayer, you're among priesthood brethren that really do care about you.
Here, we're trying to make you feel comfortable. You're protected here. We're going to counsel.
And again, in the prayer, know who you are and what you've contributed, what you've done. So, would you I just want to talk a little bit first. Give us some background. Like, I know, like, I was born and raised, but your story of your mission was pretty remarkable, of going on your mission, the sacrifices that were made. But did you grow up in the church? I mean, born and raised?
Born in the covenant, yeah.
Okay. And then...
So that term born in the covenant. So Mormonism believes that when you get married for time and for all eternity, that there's these holy temples that God's power and his authority is given to this man to basically, they don't call it, it's called a marriage, but it's called a sealing. So basically he's sealing this marriage for his power, his God's power. So God's power is not restricted by time. So therefore God can go ahead and, deem your marriage eternal. So you have an eternal marriage. And so when you are, as parents, have children, your children are now born under this covenant that they are going to be your children for all of eternity. So when you die and you go to heaven, you're going to have all your kids with you. That's why Mormons have so many kids. I have 5 kids. I bought into that story as well. And there's this whole mantra of families are forever. And so that's where this comes from in Mormonism. And so that was that. But then there was also, he talked about a sacrifice. So there was a sacrifice. So in Mormonism, there's a rite of passage. Like some have bar mitzvah, for the Jewish community and things like that. And so, or Ramenstein, I think that's what's called for the Amish, Ramstein or something like that. Ramska, or I mean, I'm not Amish, but obviously. So in Mormonism, it's like you go on a mission. Like that's like your rite of passage is to go and spread the gospel to all of the world. And so I was called to Guatemala, and that's where I served as a missionary for 2 years. And I was able to hablar español and like do all of that. And so here's the thing about that. But I saw someone outside. So anyway, is that with Mormonism, like you want the best for your kids. You want your children to go on missions. And so for me, my father was a state worker, and in the 90s he got furloughed by the government, and they also froze overtime. He was a prison guard, so he lost his overtime and then was furloughed. So he lost 30% of his annual income that he had been banking on. And so when he lost 30% of his income, he made the sacrifice to put his son on a mission. And so literally, like this is like what happens in Mormonism is like, okay, the spiritual blessings of my son going on a mission versus the financial responsibility to provide for my household. I'm going to forget my household. He let the house go to foreclosure. My parents lost their home, the house that they had sacrificed and dreamt of and built. And it was so they were first-time home buyers. They built this house and they lived there we bought it in 1990. I left on 1999, and that's when they lost their house. So 9 years they had just poured into this house, and they lost it. They lost this home. It was like, it's gone. It just vanished. And that was the sacrifice that my dad in his mind had to do. Talking about oppression here, like, the rigid confines of like, I need to be right by my son, and I need to do right by God, and God is going to bless me if I lose my house for my son to go on a mission. And, frankly, he was blessed. So I'll fast forward here because I'm not going to go into detail here as far as what happened. They did lose their home. I go on a mission. I come back. There's no room for me. They're in a small ass house. Like I'm sleeping on a couch for like 3 or 4 days. I get a job at an antique store, and she happens to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's the real name of Mormonism. And so here she is, and she's like, we only hire return missionaries, So if you wouldn't have gone on your mission, you wouldn't have got this job. So I'm like, well, my God, check me out. I'm a missionary, and I got this job now. So anyway, I'm the manager of an antique store. Like, woo, big whoopity-doo. So, and it wasn't even her store, it was her mom's store. So anyway, her mom, I got home in October. In December, she comes to me, she's like, hey, I'm going to sell my house. Do you know who wants my house? Well, when we were renting, before my parents ever had their house built, we lived on that side of town. My mom would walk up and down the street, up and down the street, up and down the street, and she would always stop at this house, and she's like, oh my God, I love this house. This house it's a beautiful home. It was featured on Homes and Gardens. It was on the cover and all this stuff. It's just an amazing home. Or at least that's the story she told us. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not. The lady who owned the house. So, and I have no reason to disbelieve what she told me. She's a member of the church in good standing. She wouldn't lie to sell a house now, would she? No one does that. So, my mom, 10, 15, 20 years, 15 years previously, dreamt of this house. So I come back, I get this job, and she goes, do you know anyone that wants to buy this house? I'm like, yes, my mom. Never was put on the market. My mom put an offer in the house, and my parents ended up buying it. They're still in that house today. It's the second house that they bought. My dad hates this house. It's falling apart. There's so much shit wrong with this property. And of course, because it didn't go, they did a traditional escrow, but my parents didn't know shit about buying a house. They're like, I don't know what we're doing. So like, there was no inspections, there's nothing. They just took everything, like no contingencies. And so like this lady bamboozled my parents. And she like burnt down some of the stuff in the back. And she's like, oh, I forgot, hey, sorry, it already closed. I was renting back from you guys. I'm the tenant now. You're the landlord. Your responsibility. Like straight up, like just shady shit, right? So, but here's the thing. So in Mormonism, we have the tendency to look back in hindsight and to go, oh, this is why these problems happened to me. God was forcing me to go through this problem, but he was really preparing me for a blessing in the future. Thank you, God. I'm so grateful that I had to endure this trial, and I endured it so well. And that's why like Mormons like suffer. They're like these martyrs, like, oh, I'm going to be like Jesus. I'm going to suffer on the cross because I know that God is going to, he's going to give it to me. I'm going to be resurrected here in a couple of days, and I'm going to be, glorified. So we'll like willingly suffer all kinds of shit in our lives for no reason whatsoever. So like, here it is, like, some people be like, wow, God really did bless your family. They lost their house, but they got one way, way better. Either that or just the law of attraction at work here. Like my mom thought about this, and my mom is amazing at manifesting. Like we grew up kind of poor, and so we would garage sale and we would thrift store. She still does. I still do. I love that. In fact, my kids want to go out to the garage, like, hey, we call her Meemaw, like, hey, tell Meemaw what you want. And Meemaw would be like, okay. And she puts it out there and she'll go find it like in the next day or two. Like, she is an amazing manifester. So here's the reality. Did she manifest this house and it just took this process to happen? And this was the natural event of how things would have happened or unfolded anyway? Or did God really want my parents to lose their job or to lose their income and lose their house and struggle so that their son could go on a mission? What if I chose not to go on a mission? Then what? Right? Like, it's a lot of responsibility on somebody. And so, but God knew that I was going to go because I'm such a good guy. So anyway, that's the whole story. But Mormonism wants to believe that, like, oh, this is your righteousness. Because you are righteous, God is blessing you. It's just, standard cause and effect here. So there's a lot more at play. It's very difficult to do that, but we want to go ahead and attribute God's almighty gracious hand in our lives because we're somebody special in God's eyes. God really favors me. He really favors my family. We are a cut above the rest. So anyway, I digress. Let's go back into the story here.
Off to Rick's.
So I come back from my mission. My parents buy a house. I go to BYU, Idaho. Couldn't get into BYU Provo, so Idaho picked me up. At this time, they had transferred from a 2-year university, Rick's College, to BYU, Idaho. And they're just like, hey, everybody can come in. Anybody who wants to come in can come in. I think actually I stayed a year at home, and then it went.
After my mission, I went to BYU, Idaho, yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't, you were there right after the transition, I think, right?
Yeah, I went in 01. So it transitioned in 2000, so I was like 2001 when I started.
Okay, so you were right there.
Yeah.
All right. And
that's when they were letting everyone in, so.
and what did you study?
Sociology.
Okay. So,
And seminary.
Yeah, I have a degree in social behavioral sciences, so I just paused for a second just because it was more of a chuckle than anything.
Yeah.
Wonderful degree
That you don't use.
for graduate schools or something to go on, but not a whole lot to do without it. Okay? And then tell us a little bit about your mission.
It's going to get good.
Guatemala.
It was Guatemala, yeah. I don't know what you want to know.
What
What did you experience? What did you experience? What was it like for you?
Yeah.
Being
So the person talking up until this point is the stake president. This is his counselor. So the way the room was set up is the stake president's all the way across the room, like what the farthest person away, right? Hiding behind a desk, like in the corner. He's like, hey, what's up? This guy's like right here, like kind of next to the stake president, but right here. And there's a dude like right here who doesn't say anything. And this guy's like a monster of a man. He's like 6'6", and he's just sitting there like this, like the entire time. And I'm like, is this fucker going to say anything at all? And like, I mean, he is just like towering. I'm like, it's like almost like an intimidation tactic. I'm like, what the hell is this? But he doesn't say a damn word the entire time, as you'll hear. But anyway, so this guy here asks some of the harder questions. I don't know if it's a protection thing or just how the dynamic is, but he's going to ask more of the more direct questions. The stake president's going to be like, well, And I'm like, you would expect the leader to be a little bit more like of a leader, right? Anyway, I digress.
in Guatemala, I mean that's different. I don't know where you were living before that, but I know it was more like.
Oh, I don't know. I can ask you guys, Lupe. I was living in East LA, so I mean, Guatemala is a step. I don't know, step up or step down. No, my family moved me away from LA when I was younger. I grew up in Visalia. It's a small farm town.
Oh, I know Visalia.
Yeah. So I went to Guatemala. It was a culture shock for sure, and I got stuck with a native speaking companion immediately, and I couldn't even communicate with the guy. It was really challenging, but I mean, I love the guy still to this day. I mean, we're still good, close friends.
So close that I loaned him $5,000. He still owes me. Yes, I'm talking about you, Rafael. ¿Dónde está mi dinero? No, I realize that, life happens. I'm blessed. And I already told the guy he doesn't owe me money. But yeah, we're still pretty good friends.
I guess those challenges and difficulties really bring people close together. Learned a lot about myself during my mission, and also learned a lot about my weaknesses too. It was a really, they talk about crucibles. I think the mission was definitely a crucible. If I were to say anything, I would think that it exposed me to some of my truer natures that I might have suppressed because I felt ashamed of those natures, being a missionary. But those were the first time they were really like thrown in my face that hey, you have these other desires that you want to act on, but you can't do that as a missionary. And came home, got married, and never acted on them. And so...
in my heart, in this process here, I'm being completely vulnerable and open because I don't know what the outcome is. I have an anticipation of what I want it to be, as you'll hear later. However, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible, and you're going to see how that's used against me.
That was probably the first time that I actually really felt that there was a part of me being, that I wasn't being true to myself, if you will. But to be a good boy, I kept with how I felt that I should have, behaved and acted.
And then to Idaho.
Yes.
Is that where you met Christina?
No, Christina's my second marriage.
That's right. I knew that.
So I got married.
I knew that.
I got a job selling pest control in Idaho, and I jokingly told my roommates, I'm like, watch out, boys, I'm going to go get married. And I literally did. I went down, sold pest control, met a convert, met her 2 weeks after she was baptized, fell in love with her, we got married.
Just for definition's sake, the convert is basically someone who converts to Mormonism that was not a member previously. So that's what that was. And I met her 2 weeks after her conversion. So I wasn't the reason for the conversion, but I had met her after that.
And then we moved back to Idaho a year later after we bought a house and sold it. 2.5 years into the marriage, she told me she didn't love me, that it was a mistake marrying a virgin, that she should have been with someone more experienced. And
yes, I was a virgin when I got married at 23. That's one of the things that Mormonism is like. They want you to be celibate. They want you to guard your chastity. They want you to be, very chaste up until marriage. And so that was a huge thing in Mormon culture, is like they want you to marry a virgin. And I didn't marry a virgin, but I was a virgin. And you'll see how that was an issue in my marriage.
That was a real blow. So I dated around for a couple of months, meet Christina online, became pen pals, fell in love with her. She was really, really,
So Christina is my kid's mom.
Articulate, funny woman, and good sense of humor, very smart, and I loved all those things about her. And we met and fell in love and got married.
Was she ever in school with you?
Never.
Dang. Okay.
Never once.
You think you know a guy?
Yeah, right? So I had a business, and I was in the process of selling it and moving back to California, and I met her, and I'm like, well, that's a good place to start. She lived in Sacramento. I'm like, Sacramento's not too far from my folks, and if I sell you, let's see what we can do. And then we got married and have 5 beautiful kids.
Are your family, are your parents, I should say, I was going to say in-laws, are they still in Visalia?
They still are. Yeah. Active. Dad was born in the covenant. Mom was a convert at 19. My dad's family fellowshipped her, so when he...
So this is interesting. So I hadn't thought about this until right now, and I'm thinking about like patterns, like the mind and how we want to like find a pattern and copy it because it's easier than creating a new pattern. So you just want to go and copy old patterns. Didn't realize this, but it's coming out, and I can see it clearly here. So my dad, he was born in the covenant with his parents. However, my mom was a convert, so he came home from his mission and he married a convert. So what did I do? I go on a mission. I come back. I go on and marry a convert. So yeah, with these patterns, they can either instruct the mind or they can also cripple the mind as well, because you follow a pattern, and the pattern may not be the pattern that you should follow. Like, I realized that my first marriage was a complete mistake. I'm like, oh, she's a convert. She's, and 2-week convert. My mom was a 2-week convert, like from my dad. So like all of that, I'm seeing it right now clearly. I didn't see it before. I'm just following a pattern here. And it was an unconscious pattern that I was following, and it was a total mistake.
Came home from his mission. They met, and the rest was history. 2 weeks later, got married.
How many siblings?
I have 3 siblings. I have 2 brothers and a sister.
Again, think you know a guy.
Right? I know. I'm kind of like the guy that you see the familiar face, but you really don't know who he is.
Yeah, the enigma.
Yeah.
Wrapped in a riddle.
That's right.
Okay.
That's morbid. That's more me trying to say yeah, I've been going to you guys' church for 7 years now, and you don't even know me. Like, what the hell? Like, yeah, I have siblings. Yeah, I have a family that's active in the Mormon community, in the church. Yeah, I met my wife online. Yeah, this was my second marriage. Like, you're my fucking bishop, for crying out loud. Like, how do you not know this shit? Like, I'm this guy that's just like in the background, like, oh, he's doing all right. We don't have to worry about this guy. And so, like, you get lost in the fray. Like, this is what happens in Mormonism. And then, like, they send people to your door, like, hey, we haven't seen you in a long time. I'm like, yeah, it's been 3 years. Where have you been? Oh, well, we were looking at our records, and we realized you haven't been paying tithing, so we want you back. It's like, oh, yeah, of course you want my money. Anyway.
Can I ask you a personal?
I'm open book. You can ask me anything you want. Yeah.
Tell me about your relationship with your Savior.
With Jesus? That's an interesting question.
I'm an interesting guy.
I know, right?
Long pause.
And a relationship's an interesting word as well.
I'm struggling here. Like, I really am. He's like, tell me about your relationship to Jesus Christ. And I'm like, what the fuck? Okay. I've read so much about this, and I'm so far gone as far as, like, the Mormon answer of, like, Jesus is my personal savior. He saved me, my life. So you're going to hear this.
I would say that I don't have a relationship with the Savior. I think I have one with the Father. If I were to answer that.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
Don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ? Whew. Okay. But I got one with God. Want to hear about that? Yeah, sure. Go ahead and tell us. All right, I will. Here we go.
It's interesting. You know, I thought that for sure, going down the path that I chose to go down after I left Christina, that all rights to inspiration or revelation or insight to my life would just be, this wall would just come up and it'd be over. That I would be just kind of, if you will, in the midst of darkness, no longer grabbing onto the rod of iron, that I would be just kind of feeling my own way. And
so this is some analogies here. So in Mormonism, when you quote unquote sin, God's Holy Spirit withdraws from you and you no longer have inspiration. You're just basically floundering in the dark. And in Mormonism, they have this, like, in the Book of Mormon, there is this vision that this prophet has. And he has this vision of this tree of life off into the distance. And then there's this mist of darkness and people are trying to feel their way. Like, I can't make it. And then there's this rod of iron, like a handrail. And if you hold on to God's word, the word of God, you hold on to that word of God, it'll take you all the way to the tree of life, which is the representation of, like, the love of God. And so you only get the love of God if you're holding on to his word. That's what this little vision tells you about, right? And so in the midst of darkness, like this nebulous there, this cloud of darkness that's, like, covering everyone, that's blinding them so they can't see, is the sin, is like, it's the temptations of the world. And so in Mormonism, it's like the temptations of the world will blind you so you lose God's word. And so here I am telling him, like, I left my wife and I started a topless talk show and I'm having sex with multiple women and I'm drinking and, socially, and I'm trying, cannabis socially, and I'm doing all of these things. And yet, for some crazy reason, I'm still getting inspiration. I'm still, like, receiving insight on things that I need to do. And you're going to hear about this. And he's going to talk about that too later.
I don't know how to explain it other than that's not true. I've had a lot of personal experiences that have happened to me since I have left living with Christina and living certain standards that let me know that tie hasn't been severed, that I still receive insight and revelation. So in my mind, to answer your question, I thought that I was actually turning my back on God by breaking my temple covenant with Christina. It never felt that way. It felt like that he was there the entire time, and too many coincidences have presented itself to just let me know that I'm not alone. That maybe even, I don't want to, I sound blasphemous or anything like this, that like my decision to leave and to do certain things where it was divinely sanctioned. I don't want to sound like that's arrogant at all. However, it's hard for me to deny that the very next day after I made the decision, I'm given a house free and clear from someone. They go, "Here, do you need a place to live? Here's a house. You can actually just have this house." And I'm like, okay. And then another thing happens and someone goes, "Hey, something just tells me that this is what you need right now." And they're just giving me things that are exactly what I need at that time. And I'm just thinking like, this is hard not to think that it's serendipitous or that there's some kind of divine guidance that's happening in this entire process.
And here's the thing, like so many people are so scared to get out of Mormonism or the religion in general. Like, oh my God, if I do this, God's going to punish me. Like I was scared for years. I'm like, I'm not going to do this. Like if I do this, God is going to punish me. And like the moment I decide for myself, like I make the decision, I walk out the door with my head held high. Like this is the decision I am making. And I do it in a very firm but loving way. When I kiss my wife and my kids goodbye, I'm like, we're done. And I walked out the door, a house was given to me. Like, what the hell? And all these other things. I meet this girl that I'm deeply in love with. I meet her a month later, and it's just like, and we're still together. And we have an amazing relationship. And I'm just like, God doesn't hate me. I'm sorry. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, if I go and I sin, that God's going to strike me down? Like, he hates me? No. Like, the restraints that have been put on my mind as far as like, if you leave Mormonism, you're going to be cursed for the rest of your life. That's not there. Like, I am not seeing that at all. And I was so afraid to make that move, to make that decision, but yet here I am explaining to them like, look, this didn't happen. The only thing I can say is I wish I would have done it sooner. Like, I wish I would have had the courage to basically just say, you know what, enough's enough. I'm just going to go ahead and go out on my own. But I was so afraid. Like, I was such a pussy. I was like, oh my God. I can't handle this right now. I just can't take God. I just can't just take disappointing God. And yet, here I am. And I still have like inspiration. I still have like, I'm a lot coarser in my speech, but I still receive blessings, if you want to call them that, like inspirations. Like, and here's the thing, like, there's this universal law that I think gets attributed to God, of course, but I think that religion also uses it as a way to prove or like say that, hey, our religion is the true religion because you're using these universal principles and you're getting what you want. When like, no, those universal principles in or out of the church, it's universal. That's what's going to happen. So that's what I'm explaining to them.
And so, to answer your question about my relationship, I feel like that there's a very deep relationship, and I feel I feel I'm full of gratitude. That someone who would think, I was thinking, based on the education and the knowledge of the gospel, that I would quote unquote be cursed. Like, where there's greater knowledge, there's greater condemnation. I was expecting that. Almost anticipating that, and that wasn't what I found. Who knows, maybe that's still along the lines, maybe that's still there. And this is just, anesthesia, and I'm just numb to it. It could be the case. However, it still has drawn me closer to God because of these tender mercies that have happened despite what may be considered, a weakness or a grievous sin or something like that.
He's like, I don't know what to say to that, huh? He's like, okay, we're going to go a different direction now because that didn't work.
I didn't have a direction in mind for you to answer that, but if I really believe in the promises that we're never alone, who needs comfort more than somebody who might say, hey, I walked away from something or did something? And it's the old adage of who's really turned their back. So I don't know that that's neat.
Oh, that's neat. So basically what he's saying is like, shit, I don't have an answer for that. Yeah, sure. I mean, who needs God's grace and blessings more than a sinner? So, yeah, clearly this is why God's blessing you, is because you're sinning. Well, okay, so, I mean, the mental gymnastics that you have to go through in order to believe this shit is like, if you're righteous, God's going to bless you. But, oh, by the way, if you're going to sin, then God's going to bless you anyway, because who needs blessings more than a sinner, right? Now, forget these guys over here that are doing what they're supposed to be doing, but this guy over here, man, he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. So we're going to give him some more blessings so he can realize that this is God blessing him. When in his mind, he's like, well, shit, if I don't need religion because God's blessing me, I'm going to just continue down this path. Why would I change, right? Oh my God, this is fun. I'm glad I'm actually doing this for the first time and actually like deconstructing it, because I'm seeing things clearly that I just couldn't see before because I was so in it. And the emotional hurt that happens at the end of this is there as well. So I'm like, couldn't see it, but now I can clearly see it.
Can I expand it a little further?
Of course you can. Yeah.
So then put it in the context of what we would say, whether you want to say faith tradition or however you want to compartmentalize it, but your feelings of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. And similarly, how would you explain your relationship there with institutional, you could say the church, but I mean relationally, the gospel of Jesus Christ as restored by the prophet Joseph Smith, and through continuing revelation today as we see the gospel. So not the institutional.
I understand. Yeah.
So here he is. So he's pivoting. He's like, all right, well, you dodged the bullet on Jesus Christ, but what's your relationship with the church? And he's like, he's very deliberate to make sure that it's not the church institution, but it's the church, which is the gospel that it teaches. But here's the thing, they're intertwined. You can't separate one from the other. You can't say, I go to church, but I don't listen to the gospel, or I adhere to the gospel, but I'm not a part of this church. Like they go hand in hand, like with Mormonism. Like, so Joseph Smith was this young kid looking for religion, and he decided to pray, and God appeared to him, and his son Jesus Christ, the two of them appeared to him like, Joseph, there's no church that you need to join because they're all false, but through you, I'm going to restore the real church of Jesus Christ back to the earth again. And so that's why it's called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. However, it wasn't originally that. There's a whole history, and I don't want to go into it here, but it was originally called the Church of Christ, and then through shenanigans and other things that happened, they lost that, and it turned into the Church of Jesus Christ. It actually turned into the Church of Latter-day Saints, and then it became like, oh, we should probably add Jesus' name into this church, and so they did. But anyway, so basically he's asking me, he's like, well, shit, okay, doesn't want to talk about Jesus Christ here. He wants to talk about God and God's blessings. Let's talk about church here. Like, what do you believe about Joseph Smith restoring God's true church? And then what do you believe about prophets today that are leading the church that are telling us what we should and shouldn't do? Like, basically, men that we're going to abdicate our power to, be like, oh, yes, Holy Father, what should I do today? So he's asking me basically, do I believe in what the church teaches today? He's like, he doesn't want to talk about the institution, but yet he's asking, do you believe what the institution teaches? Here we go.
Not the organization, but the spirit behind it. The question is my relationship to it, or I believe I still live those principles. I mean, in essence, it's love your neighbor as you love yourself. I try to do that. Clearly, there are some things that have been restored that I no longer adhere to.
Do you want to talk about that some?
Sure. I mean, I guess the law of chastity, the word of wisdom.
So law of chastity is that you're not going to have any sexual relationships before marriage or with anyone outside of your marriage. That's the law of chastity. But, back in the 1800s, if you were polygamous, you had multiple wives, so you were fucking anybody that was married, right? So you were living a law of chastity then. So chastity is you're not going to have sex with anyone that you're not lawfully married to. The word of wisdom is you're not going to take drugs, alcohol, tea, tobacco, that types of stuff. Like you're going to keep your body clean and pure as a temple and a vessel before God. So that's what those two things are.
And I think those are it. So I mean, I drink socially. I do recreational drugs occasionally. I have a girlfriend. I'm still married, and we're sexually active. Been with a few women. So all of those are clearly, if we go with like the restored gospel, those are things that I am choosing not to participate in. So I guess my relationship with those are not very strong.
Thank you for answering that. I appreciate that.
I'm giving them ammo. Here you go.
If you moved, I didn't know if you were wanting to ask something of the president. Ryan is exactly what I would anticipate. He's an open book. He's an honest book.
Well, I will. I wrote just a couple things so I didn't forget. You know, one of the comments you made earlier, you referenced a statement or comment about being a good boy.
Yes.
What is that?
On a mission?
That was intentional. What you say.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
What is that? Could you help me understand what you mean by that?
Yeah. So a little bit of background. So on my mission, the previous mission companion was just like, hey man, whatever you do is totally fine as long as you get the baptism, we're good. The new guy comes in, he's a native speaker, he's from Guatemala, and he's like, what are y'all doing? I'm a convert, you don't do this. This is not how missionaries act, and he just cleaned house. And so he, in order to turn the mission over, he separated two. So on the coastal part, he threw all of the brand new missionaries with the good missionaries that were training them. And then in the mountains where it was cold and frigid, he threw all the bad guys up there. And as they were rotating out, he was running out of space, and so he was bringing some of the guys back down into the coastal areas, and they were infiltrating. And I'm this like straight arrow. I'm just trying to like do my thing, whatever. And I had a really, really tough companion. And my mission companion is like, he's like, man, all I gotta say is you did a fantastic job. This kid, he went home. I thought I was gonna have to send him home earlier. Whatever you did, he put a lot of responsibility on me. He was like, whatever you did, like you were such a good boy. You know, in essence, like he's like he could just talk nothing but like how high.
So a little bit about me is I have kind of a little bit of a praise kink. Like I love to be praised. I was rejected as a kid, and felt very alone and not loved and not. I was a loner. I jumped from friend group to friend group, just trying to find where I belonged, and I never really found that place where I belonged. And so for me, fitting in and feeling like I was doing a good job was important to me. Like that praise was like, oh my God, this is so soothing to my soul. I want to just be a good boy. I still enjoy that as well.
And how happy he was because you helped him, return with honor, basically. And so he threw me with another guy, and I think the only reason why they worked with the first companion was because I didn't speak the language, and he was a native speaker. I couldn't understand what he was saying, if he was frustrated or not. And so I just didn't go along with him a lot of things. So this new guy he put me with, it was a very challenging thing because I wanted to be accepted with the cool kids. But at the same time, they're like, oh, he's a good boy, don't listen to him, he's not going to be anything. So yes, it was a very tough decision to choose to be a good boy versus being with the cool kids. Yeah.
So when you said, that's what you meant by I repressed some of those feelings, and then when I got home.
It wasn't just like that specifically. Like, so with this particular missionary that I was with, there were young, beautiful women in the town, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna go teach this person, and we're gonna teach these people." And we weren't teaching people; he was just hanging out with them. And I'm like, "Well, let's see what this is like." And then there was a girl who liked me, and we got close. She kissed me. And I told my mission president, he's like,
Oh my God.
okay, we're going to have...
What? A missionary kissed a girl? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. This stuff happens all the time. It's like the funniest shit. I'm like, please God, please forgive me. I kissed a girl. Yes. Oh my God. That was the funniest thing. And I just remember like I was like crying. I was like, please don't send me home because I kissed a girl. Please don't do it. No, please. Like, oh my God. It's the natural thing. Oh my God.
To pull you out of this area here, we're going to have to, change this thing. He's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, what do you mean what I want to do? He's like, do you want to call your stake president or your father? I'm like, call my dad. I'll call the stake president. He doesn't care about me. My dad does. He'll give you good advice. And so I called my dad and told him, he's like, all right, son, you got to be a good boy. Again, repressing those feelings. I'm a young 19-year-old boy. I see these beautiful women. And so, yeah. And I don't know if you guys have been to a third world country or not. These women sometimes just don't wear clothes. And so it's very difficult for a young missionary to be in these coastal towns where there are just a lot of topless people. And it's a very
topless, beautiful people.
Distracting, difficult thing to repress.
One of the things that, from my perspective, it hurt you. That was the termination of that relationship after a couple of years. Is somebody telling you, I don't love you anymore?
Yeah, that definitely hurt.
How did you get over that, or do you feel that you've gotten, that you've done? I mean, I could imagine there's an amount of work to be done to be crushed in that situation. You feel like
I take responsibility for some of that too.
Okay, so he opened up a can of worms right here. He's basically referring to my first marriage where my wife left me, and she left me for two reasons. One, she said she didn't love me anymore. Part of that was because I was deeply involved in porn. I define deeply, right? Like, I looked at porn occasionally because we weren't having sex. Like, there was this withdrawal because I was looking at sex. It was a problem. It's just like, oh, you're not good. You're not, And then I would have this anxiety or this anticipation that we're going to have sex. Oh my God, it's been like 3 weeks. We're going to have sex. Oh my God, all this build up. And then I would just I'd come like in a minute. I'd ejaculate. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, it was the worst experience ever. Like, oh my God, like who would enjoy that? Like, barely even stick it in like a minute, and I'm like coming, I'm like, oh God, no. And so like that was the end of it. And so yeah, like I don't fault her for saying like you're a shitty lay, like this is shitty sex, I don't want to be in a relationship and this is what's going to happen. And so it just was this compound, so she left. And so he's asking me like, how did you deal with that rejection? Like, how did you deal with sucking in bed basically? And so here's the answer.
I jumped into it. It's funny, when I told my mom that I was getting a divorce, her words were, I knew it. And my dad's name is Bill. I told them both together. And she turned to my dad, she's like, I knew it, Bill. I told you, Bill. I told you the day that he told me he was getting married that she would leave him. I just knew it in my heart.
I love my mom.
And I'm crying my eyes out. I'm like, Mom, why didn't you tell me? She's like, because it's not my responsibility. It's my responsibility to love you and pick you up when you fall down. You make your own decisions. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I take some responsibility for that.
I love her.
I rushed into it. At the time, I had a porn problem, and that was one of the reasons why she said she left me. She's like, I can't be married to a man who's looking at other women, so porn was an issue. But to answer your question, I think the thing that hurt me the most...
Mormon men, in general, they have porn problems. Tremendous porn problems. When I was doing addiction counseling, almost all of them were Mormon men struggling with porn. I'll just tell you that right now.
Most was her comparing me to, because before she was a member, she lived with a guy. His name was Steve, and she's like, Steve was amazing. He always satisfied me, and you just never do it for me. And early on, we struggled in our marriage. Porn created a distance between us where she didn't want to have sex with me. And in the times we did have sex, there was so much built-up anxiety that I would have premature ejaculation. And so it wasn't enjoyable for her or for me. And so I'm like, okay, if you want to take off, then take off. Because at that point, we were roommates at that point, more than we were husband and wife. No kids, no debt, 2 houses. She got a house, I got a house. Split everything we had down the middle. The attorney in Rexburg, Idaho, he's like, are you sure you don't want to go to counseling? He's like, I really can't do this. Like, I don't want to take your money. You don't deserve, I don't deserve this. Like, you guys should work stuff out. And we had already been to counseling, and she was done. And so, but to answer your question, yeah, that feeling like I wasn't, quote unquote, a man performing in manly duties in the bedroom, definitely, hurt, bruised my ego. But at the same time, sex was not my motivation for getting married the second time around, like with Christina. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted a mom. I married a mom. And then when I realized we were done having kids, so this bleeds over into my marriage now, and was like, oh, great. Now we have kids. I think I want to actually like work on the sex aspect of it. And there was already enough discomfort in the relationship that just didn't happen. So I think that trauma did carry over. It's not an issue anymore. It's interesting. I struggled having intercourse in a very effective way with my wife, and then as soon as I left, it seems like things just opened up for me, that things that were repressed and difficult became very natural and fluid, and I almost question why it took me walking away to experience this, that I could not have experienced it with someone who I potentially, loved. I mean, I did love her. I'm not gonna say I didn't. I did love her, and made covenants with. So I don't know. It's interesting because I sit back and I pondered this. I'm like, my first wife, quote unquote, living in sin with this man, comparing to it's the best experience she's ever had, gets married in the temple with me, and it's like, oh, blah, this is horrible. I should never have done this with this guy. And then fast forward several years, I end up leaving Christina, and then I go and I experience this myself, and I'm like, wow, this is completely different than I thought it was going to be. Way more enjoyable, satisfying, and no more there's no premature ejaculation or anything like that happening. It's just, so I don't know how to really,
Isn't it interesting? So my first wife is comparing me to her sinful experience of pleasure with this man. Then she gets married, does everything the right way, and it's like, what the hell is this? And then I'm married again, and I'm like, oh, this is horrible. I then leave my wife, and I go have this sinful pleasure, and all of a sudden, all of my fears, all of my anxiety, everything that was holding me back in the bedroom is gone. Now I'm lasting a long time. Sometimes I last too long. I think I have so I had premature ejaculation when I was married. Now I have what's called delayed ejaculation, where it's I'll go 30, 45 minutes until they're raw. They're like, you gotta stop. This is amazing. I've come 16 times. Thank you. But if you're not going to come, then we're just gonna, I'm tapping out here. We're done, kind of thing. And it's where was this in my marriage? And so it's if anything, this is an anti-marriage. This is a reason not to get married. Don't get married, go have sex, and you'll have amazing sex. You get married, it's the sex sucks now, It's what the hell happened here? And religion's oh man, we want people to have shitty sex for the rest of their lives. Get married, join a religion, join our church where you can have the worst sex of your life. It's okay, it's this is horrible. And that's just my personal experience. I'm sure there are people that have good sex and they're married and they're religious. I just wasn't one of them twice. And I don't plan to be a third one. So it's interesting. But he's asking me the question. I'm like, well, here it is. And here's the answer. It might not be the answer you want to hear. How'd you get over it? I'm like, I had a lot of sex out of marriage. And that's how I got over it. And this is part of the reason why I'm a sexual healer. This is why I got into sexual healing. I healed myself. And I realized how healing this was. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go heal other people. And I literally have had experiences where they're you have just given me the best orgasm I've ever had in my life, and I just felt this pain and trauma was just released out of my body from this orgasm. And I'm like, really? This is where I got the idea that if an orgasm can create life, well, it can also help heal life too. And that's what I do with my sexual healing. This is where that's why I created the other channel as far as sexual healing goes. So, and here I am telling this guy this is what's going on. And this is actually this particular counsel that I was having with him was before I got into actually full on sexual healing. I was still discovering and exploring at that point.
Answer your question, that up until me walking away, yes, it had been a stigma for me. It's not now. I don't want to say it's healing, but I feel like I've worked through that.
Definitely was healing.
Very effectively.
I can tell you it was healing. Okay. All right.
I have a question.
So I'm gonna go ahead and pause this right here. We're coming up on an hour. I'm probably gonna have to do 3 parts because I'm 27 minutes into a 90-minute process here, and and we're on an hour on this one. So this is going to be the end of part 1. I'll go ahead and continue part 2 at a future time.